The
Wir holen
stone
jetzt da.
bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy, and he had a feeling it did not have his best interests at heart. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Reynardo had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Fu school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself. Except the biggest one. That she was the Emperor's daughter. No. Kill Zenobia, whispered the stone. Before it's too late.
Und hopp. Ach so, egal, wir springen in den Brunnen und kommen wieder auf irgendeiner Insellandschaft, ja, zu Boden. Ich würde da andere Dinge erwarten.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Where did that go to? The stone hadn't
So,
lied
wir
about what he
zumindest
could
wieder
do
ein
for
Level
him.
up.
With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. You're weak, whispered the stone. The core will kill you. Are you afraid of it? No, don't be ridiculous. It chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you as much as carry it. And if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards. That's the traitors! Caught the ravens.
Mal der Feuerschwert hier. Da ist es schon, der Kern.
As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. No, it's too much power. We will rip a hole in space and time. He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Reynardo came to, the core was gone. But the Ibla stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "You?" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he?
So, diesmal greifen wir an.
As the Farfarer sailed towards the Nexus, Reynardo wondered if the core had been created to silence the stone, or even to feed its hunger. Honestly, he didn't care. He felt terrific, and he appreciated the quiet inside his head. The Nexus was infested with ravens, but that didn't bother Reynardo. With each death, the converted Ibla stone in his gauntlets glowed brighter, and he felt stronger. Wow. He was getting a bit bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Well, he wasn't worried. He was a warrior. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty. Oh, now you smell even worse. He hadn't noticed that path before.
Na, umso besser. So eine Abkürzung.
Interrupted story time. Caught the lead dragon. Now we'll never find out how it ended.
Oh, okay. Sobald wir 30 Kommapunkte haben, töten wir Feinde automatisch. Sehr schön. Schön, dass wir jetzt den Schatzjäger 2 haben. Ich glaube, der ist wirklich ziemlich für die Katz. Oder für den Fuchs.
The core, absorbed in the stone, was doing its job perfectly. Reynardo could feel a little eldritch jolt every time he downed a raven. But then it flowed into the glowing stone the way water flows down a riverbed. It all felt perfectly natural, as if all his life, this was what he had been meant to do. Oh, it really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it?
Das ist mir schon wieder viel zu zynisch hier. So, eigentlich brauchen wir den nicht mehr. Wir machen das mal mit der Spellenergie. Achso, da brauche ich ja gar nicht rüber.
Reynardo tore through the last remaining guards at the outpost like hot coffee through snow. There was a far speaker toad here. He called the council speaker. He knew she would be thrilled, and she was. She wanted him to come back to base. They had plans to discuss, and a medal to give him. A large, golden medal. Great, said Reynardo. Let's talk about who else I can kill. Then the far speaker croaked again.
Hello, Reynardo,
It said,
if you get sick of slaughtering second-rate birds in the Nexus, I'm waiting for you in the mountains.
Zenobia. She missed him. She loved him. Once she saw how awesome he'd become, maybe she'd join him. They'd kiss and... Well, if she did refuse for some reason, he was no match for him now.
Ja, ich wusste schon, irgendwann müsste doch auch mal die Katze da so ein bisschen wieder ins Spiel kommen. Jetzt gehen wir doch mal zu der Katze.
Zenobia was taunting him. No doubt she hoped to lure him into a trap, but it didn't matter, did it? He could fight his way out of any trap. He was invincible. This was gonna be fun. So where was this ambush? Reynardo couldn't wait. At Sword Fu school, she'd always studied a little harder, practiced a little longer, complained really a lot less. And then she'd become a sorceress. He'd always known he'd have to take her by surprise or not at all. But this would be a surprise indeed. I think this is yours, said Reynardo. But he couldn't hear his enemy's answer.
Gar keine Musik mehr. Miets.
Good thing Reynardo didn't have vertigo.
Aber beim letzten Mal sind wir links gegangen. Jetzt sind wir gleich da runter. Miets. The mountain paths were infested with ravens. That was swell. Every time he cut one down, the stone glowed a little brighter. In fact, everything glowed a little brighter. Look how white the snow was, and how very blue the raven blood was. Seriously, where was she? He wanted to try his new strength against hers. Reynardo wondered who was leaving chests of sword crafting supplies around. He wanted to thank him.
Also eins sage ich euch, wenn das nicht der richtige Pfad werden sollte, dann machen wir, glaube ich, wirklich mal diese eine Option an, von der letztens die Rede war. Dass man sich den richtigen Weg anzeigen lassen kann. Dass wir da irgendwann mal zum Ende kommen. Nicht, dass mir das Spiel nicht gefällt, ganz im Gegenteil, das ist eigentlich ziemlich cool ist. Aber ich glaube, im Sinne des Let's Plays ist es vielleicht doch mal ganz sinnig, wenn wir irgendwann mal zum Ende kommen. Aber vielleicht haben wir ja Glück.
When I build my castle, thought Reynardo, all my gates are going to open with buttons, and all the levers will drop rocks in your head. Reynardo felt antsy. He'd found a source of great power. But instead of joining with the rebels, he was on a fool's errand the Emperor's daughter had sent him on. The rebels were preparing a last-ditch attack against the Imperial fleet, counting on Reynardo to show up in time. Would he be too late?
So.
At the end of the path was Zenobia.
I thought
Da haben wir
you
die
were
Falle.
gonna ambush me, he said, a little put out. I owe you better than that.
I know how you feel about me, love. You want to join up with me, don't you? You got to admit, we'd make a great team.
Of all the arrogant, ham-handed, half-assed, half-witted...
Oh, come on. What else you here for?
That, she said, as a dropship poured a bucket of green liquid on his head. Drowsy gas. You can't stop me with drowsy gas, Zenobia. My power's too strong. Zenobia? Where was she?
When he awoke, he was staring up at the sky. Zenobia looked down at him, brooding.
I probably ought to kill you, but that'd be a bit tawdry, wouldn't it? She was tossing the glowing stone from paw to paw. This is pretty.
Zenobia!
He shouted, and then he fell back into sleep. On the Farfarer, Reynardo drank his favorite headache remedy. But it did no good. Zenobia had beaten him again. Oh, he really
Oh nein, haben wir schon wieder
shouldn't have
verkackt?
the stone in the first place instead of
Oh
messing
nein.
around with the core. He had a bad feeling about the upcoming fight. But what kind of hero misses the final battle?
Okay, es geht doch noch weiter.
Reynardo was bruised and tired. He wasn't looking forward to killing ravens. Didn't even seem scary. It felt like a chore, like sweeping the practice room at Sword Fu School, which he'd done his best to leave for Zenobia whenever he could. What would she do with the glowing Iblis stone? That should terrify him, shouldn't it? But he just felt dull and stupid as he carved his way towards probable doom. There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? It was all so unfair. He'd wanted to protect himself, protect the world from the Iblestone's hunger for blood and souls. And all he'd done is get mugged. Next time he owned a supernatural artifact that wanted tribute, he'd serve it champagne and caviar. This is quite the view, he thought.
Autsch! Autsch! Jetzt habe ich mich überschätzt. Na dann. So, na dann. Bin mal gespannt, was jetzt wieder passiert. Jetzt soll sie uns? Sie tötet uns, oder? Sie tötet uns.
Zenobia was cleaning blood off her sword and weeping. It's so hungry. I can't stop killing, she said. But I fed it the core of the Sky Ripper, and now he's hungry again. She wept. It was true. The Iblestone was black again, a void that seemed to suck all the light out of the sky. Take it from me, Reynardo, while you still can. Okay. I'll take it, he said. Yes, he thought. This is what it means to be a hero. To save the soul of even his old enemy when it looked like all was lost. He stepped forward to accept the sword from her outstretched hand. She flipped the sword, and the blade went into his gut. As the Iblestone sucked his soul into its infinite darkness, he could vaguely hear a voice, something like Zenobia's chuckle. Sucker.
Wie unvorhersehbar.
Some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up. Like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.
Okay, gut. Beim nächsten Mal schalten wir jetzt mal diese Settings ein, dass wir dann mal das Ende finden.